Hi, this is Argonax, and we talk about things that don't matter. Growing up playing games when I was younger, I was always fascinated whenever a game had an intro cinematic. You know, those pre-rendered cutscenes that would play anytime that you booted a game up. I used to watch a lot of these in the games from the late 90s all the way to the late 2010s. Just going off the top of my head, games with amazing intro cinematics are like Age of Mythology, Empire Earth, literally all of the Tekken games. MechWarrior games had great intro cutscenes as well. StarCraft 2 had a lot of amazing cutscenes anytime you opened the game. Honestly, just take your pick of a game from the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 era, and more often than not, they're going to have an intro cinematic. Video game intro cinematics is an art form in of itself. There's no need for a grand overarching story or an overly long cutscene to play. All they really need to do is keep it simple for the player so that they can relate the cinematic to the video game itself. It also does help if the cinematic itself has good visuals and action, music, you know, the usual jazz. Unfortunately, it's an art form that's becoming less and less common. More often than not, video game companies will put more money into the trailer than bothering to make a convincing intro cinematic. And keep in mind, trailers are different from intro cinematics. Usually trailers will just showcase various gameplay or cutscenes from different parts of the game, with the usual Inception BWOM music playing in the background.
Raise your hand if taking on the Justice League is the worst idea you've ever heard.
I kinda zoned out.
Intro cinematics, on the other hand, are usually a self-contained story beat, usually for the purposes of just trying to showcase the player what the game is all about within the moments of opening the game executable or inserting the disc. So how does this relate to Secret Level? Well, Secret Level is basically what would happen if you take all of those early cinematics from all those video games from before and turn them into a full-fledged TV episode. For those who are unaware, Secret Level is an anthology series made by Amazon, where every episode is a different game universe with its own self-contained story. And to put it bluntly, I love it. I think it's great. As a show, I think it has unlimited potential for all sorts of different stories from all kinds of games and universes. And yet, Secret Level seems to be quite decisive in terms of critic reviews. Quite often, you'll see various review websites listing it as 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. There seems to be quite a gulf of opinions when it comes to this show. So, if you'll allow me, I want to break down exactly why this is the case, and why you, dear internet wanderer, shouldn't let these review scores affect your opinions of this amazing TV show. Because, a bit of a spoiler, the potential of this show is almost unlimited, and I don't want people having the wrong idea about it because they saw a bunch of 5 out of 10 scores about this show made by people who obviously do not play video games. Hello and welcome, Internet Wanderer. My name is Argonax. I make video reviews, essays, commentaries, and shorts. I hope you enjoy my content enough to do all the YouTube things, such as liking and subscribing. And special thanks to all the channel members, to who I am extremely grateful for their support. Their contributions mean the world to me, and it helps keep the channel going. So, if you'll allow me, let's get back to the topic at hand. So I'm gonna be a bit cynical. I know that a lot of professional movie critics don't necessarily play video games. And I'll be generous and say that the ones who do definitely didn't do so when intro cinematics was in their peak. In other words, they weren't really heavily invested into the culture of gaming from the 90s up until the late 2010s. In other words, you could kind of classify these critics as the ones who would call all gaming consoles Nintendos. They wouldn't necessarily see the appeal of a bite-sized video game cinematic, especially one where exposition is minimal. And that definitely plays a part into the overall perception of Secret Level as a TV show, given that its longest episode to date out of the 8 episodes that are currently available is 20 minutes long. Some of these episodes are barely longer than 10 minutes, which of course compared to a video game opening cinematic is a lot longer, but especially for those uninitiated to video games, it's a little difficult for them to necessarily understand the universe within an individual episode, especially since the episodes don't really try to explain how their universes work. Now, of course, I am what you can call a seasoned gamer. I've played video games all my life, and thus I have quite a good understanding of all the universes and games featured within these episodes. Even the games that I've never played myself within Secret Level, I'm familiar with at least. So I don't need a multi-minute long exposition dump for me to understand concepts or cool moments. For example, within an episode, they'll try to showcase a character respawning. For people who play video games, you instantly understand what's being shown known. But to those unaware, they might just think of it as like some throwaway magical bullshit that doesn't get explained any further. Another example, and a bit of a spoiler, is the Unreal Tournament episode. To the uninitiated viewer, all they might see is, oh, this episode is all about robot oppression, rebellion, and gladiatorial games. But to those who actually have any concept of video games, that episode was literally just trying to showcase the concept of being carried. Or in other words, funnel strategies, I guess. Even the most boring episode within the show so far, the Crossfire episode, which on the surface just appears to be like two mercenary groups fighting each other in an abandoned city, which I won't lie, it is just that. It is just two groups of regular people shooting each other with guns. But it's the show trying to rationalize how a escort VIP game mode would appear in the form of a TV show. And that's honestly what most of these episodes are. They're not trying to be overly complicated or deep. Usually the episode has like one story beat. It's super simple, super straightforward. It doesn't try to be anything more complex or deep than what it is. This episode is soldiers escorting a VIP. This episode is Space Marines trying to kill some eldritch time monster. This episode, a martial artist is trying to get revenge for the murder of his father. They're super simple and basic, which again invokes the whole principle of video game intro cinematics. They didn't try to pull things like complex, overarching story beats. They couldn't. Intro cinematics at most were 2 minutes long at the maximum. They had to be short and they had to be simple. These TV episodes just have the benefit of them being stretched out and have longer action scenes. So I think one of the many disconnects for these TV critics is the inability to just understand that these episodes are not trying to be a piece of a grander whole. They're not. They're individual pieces, and those individual pieces are not themselves trying to be overly complicated. This is very much an instance where the universe and the spectacle will carry the individual episode further than any sort of internal plot or story within that one episode. This is also a rather unfortunate side effect of Secret Level being an anthology series, and thus episodes can vary wildly in terms of themes, tones, art styles, action, etc. One episode can be full of atmosphere and drama, and the other complete comedy. But that's just the nature of anthologies as a whole. For some added context, the series' spiritual predecessor, Love, Death, and Robots, wasn't rated the highest either, especially for its first season. So this is definitely a side effect of the type and genre of show that it is. And again, just to make it completely blunt, if you're familiar with video games, you can definitely appreciate these episodes more. But enough talking about things that people disagree with. Now I just want to quickly talk about the stuff that the show does great. There are currently 8 episodes at the time of me recording and making this video, and I have no major complaints about these episodes. They all do their own little thing perfectly. Each episode is a different game universe, and those 8 game universes are, in order of episode, Dungeons & Dragons, which I am familiar and I've played quite a bit, although I'm still relatively new to the universe. The episode was good, ends in a cliffhanger, could have been better. Episode 2, Sifu. I'm familiar with it. I definitely need to play the game. I'll probably pick it up next time it goes on sale. Great episode. The art style and the action, superb. Episode 3, New World. I'm familiar with it. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of MMOs, but this is also my favorite episode. Arnold Schwarzenegger is amazing in his comedic role. Best episode. Episode 4, Unreal Tournament. I've definitely played Unreal, but it's been a really long time and only really for a short while. I'm more familiar with the effects that this game had rather than the game itself. I like how the episode showcases spawning items, and just hearing the announcer saying those classic "First Blood" lines is just great. Episode 5, Warhammer. I'm familiar with Warhammer, very much so. I want to spite all of my Warhammer friends by vowing to never play Warhammer ever in my life. That being said, the action in this episode is easily the best in the entire series so far. It almost made me want to play a Warhammer game. Almost. Next up, Pac-Man. Yes, I have played Pac-Man. At this point, who hasn't? But this episode is very far removed from its source material, and honestly, I kinda applaud it for trying to be so wacky and out there. This is basically what I would say is what would happen if you told Zack Snyder to make his own Pac-Man episode. It's a very unique take on a very old video game. Kind of like that edgy Bomberman video game from a while back. After that, you have Crossfire, which I am actually familiar with. It's basically a knockoff of Counter-Strike 1.6 with a bunch of random skins. This episode was rather boring, but again, it's nice to see them try to make a story about Escort, a VIP game mode, and it's also the longest episode in this series so far for some reason. And the final episode at the time of this recording is the Armored Core episode. I don't want to give too much spoilers about this one since I think this episode puts the biggest stock in its story, but I'll try to word it in such a way that doesn't necessarily directly spoil the story of this episode. You are Johnny Silverhand with a Johnny Silverhand inside your head, and you're trying to armored core all of the other Johnny Silverhands is the best way that I can explain it without spoiling the story. And that's about all the episodes that we have here right now. From what I've seen on lists, there's not that many episodes in this first season. I am very curious to see how they're going to handle the Concord episode. That's going to be rather interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I was rather surprised by all of the discourse that came around the reviews and ratings of this show. I understand it's not for everybody, of course, video games aren't for everybody either, but I just feel like a lot of these reviews are not made in bad faith necessarily, but more so made in ignorance, if that makes sense. A lot of these people just don't understand that these cinematics and episodes, they're not trying to be deep, they're not trying to be overly complicated. They're trying to act almost as a more complex trailer for the game universes that they are set in. And I won't lie, a lot of these episodes made me want to try the games that they're based on, except the Warhammer one. So I guess the best way that I can end it is just to say it's a very good show, and I am looking forward to a season 2 of it. I hope that they make a MechWarrior episode. I am not biased, yes I am. And honestly, if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. It's a great show. But what do you think, Internet Wanderer? Have you seen the show? What do you think about it? And tell me down in the comment section below, why exactly do you really like Warhammer? Let's be real. Warhammer fans aren't real. None of you guys are real. Warhammer isn't even a good... Thanks for watching, Internet Wanderer. Do the YouTube things.